I guess, and for those of us on the West Coast, good morning and welcome from across North America. I see that we actually have some of our friends from south of the border joining us today, which is awesome. We've got some great attendance, so I'm really looking forward to an exciting and fun session today. And wow, we're on step 10. We've come to the end of this series. This is very exciting. It feels like we only just started. All right, well, let's get started on this one, shall we? As always, your host today, myself, David, presenting with backup from the lovely Lauren Connor, who does a great job in keeping us running here. And if you are running into any technical difficulties, please just text or email Lauren. And of course, as always, we do record these sessions, and we'll be sending that recording out to you after the session is over. For anyone joining us for the first time, or if you've missed any of the 10 steps along the way, we do have recordings of all 10 steps, and we will be making those available to you. We find often that as we get started initially, the sound tends to be a little bit out of sync, and things seem to settle down. So if just be patient with the technical issues, and we'll get flowing. The other thing that we have is our control panel. Now that'll be popping up automatically on the right-hand side of your screen. There's a little red arrow there where you can collapse it back if you need a little bit more real estate. There's also a text box area, so you can instant chat with us. Lauren's monitoring that, and we will be, of course, asking questions as we go. So if you have any thoughts or want to contribute to the session, feel free. Please just type us a message, and we will respond. You also have the ability to raise your hand. So again, if you're having a technical issue, or if you want to contribute, or if you need something particular topic we're talking about, and you'd like some additional explanation, please feel free. And then finally, when you see this logo, this is your invitation to contribute. We're going to be asking questions and polls through the session, as we always do, and we do want to have your feedback and participation. So with no further ado, let's get started. As we've been doing with this whole series, we're going to open with an opening thought, and I thought it would be appropriate to return to our friend Albert for our opening thought today. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And from a scientific perspective, when we look at the scientific method, it's really about cause and effect, and it's really about, can I duplicate the results? So if I do the same thing over and over and over again, I should be getting the same results. And if I'm getting different results, then there's some variables in there that I need to consider. But when we talk about a duplicatable experiment, that means I can do the same thing. So every time I mix baking soda and vinegar, it fizzes up. And I can demonstrate that over and over again and reliably duplicate that. It's when we have that reliable duplication of a cause and effect, and we're expecting something different, well, there's the definition of insanity. And how does this relate to our topic today? Well, we're at the end of our 10 steps, and the end of those 10 steps is to really reflect back and look at how we did. And the purpose of that is around improvement. So can we change something within the experiment, within the execution, that's going to give us a different result when we finish? And if we do want to truly improve our performance, we need to do something different. And hence, if we don't change what we're doing and we expect the same result, well, we're into insanity according to Albert. And just a little side note of the 10 steps and having quotes at each time, I actually used Albert Einstein 3 times out of our 10, so he accounts for 30% of our quotes. Just a little interesting side note. Okay, and as we have been doing, reflecting back on the challenges from our first session. So I've highlighted again which ones we're going to really be focusing on or addressing today. Communication throughout. We need to communicate back how things worked and so on. Getting support from senior management. If we're not continually improving, it's kind of hard to get that support. In fact, we can bump up that support from senior management by showing that continuous improvement. People conflicts and dealing with those, of course. And then I was back and forth on the sticking with previous decisions. And I left it in because really, this will help us when we reflect back and see how did we do with those decisions, and were they good? Was there room for improvement? As well as we can reflect back on, okay, this is how we planned to do it, and this is why we did it, and making sure that from an expectations perspective that people are still in line with what we were doing and what our vision was. So that's kind of why I kept that one in. Step 10, can't believe it's already step 10. Wow, perform post-project review. And of course, as always, we have our touchstone slide, just looking at the 10 steps, initiating, really understanding that why are we here, what are we here to do, what's the benefit. Steps 2 through 8, defining the project, defining that deliverable, defining the parameters and what's going to be done, the work that needs to be done. So our product scope and our project scope, figuring out who's going to do that and how long it's going to take, how much it's going to cost, and what are the details involved, developing the schedule, when is it all going to happen, looking at our risks, what could possibly torpedo us, or what lies below the surface and road bumps that we have ahead, getting that approval, and then finally doing the work. And we talked about being that bipolar where we have to switch from whoa, cowboy, as we're planning, and slow down and think about it, to giddy up and let's get the job done, getting that sense of urgency. Well, now we're into step 10. And step 10 is all about how did we do, and are we done? Can we get that sign off from our customers, get those final actuals, get the wrap up the books, tie up all the loose ends, and prepare to move on to the next project. So what we're going to look at today is a 4-step process for this. And step 1, collect the final actuals. So we looked a lot during step number 9 around the whole concept of collecting actuals and reporting status and getting that clear picture and looking at things like EVM and earned value management and so on. So we need to collect those final actuals. We need to do a post-project review. How did we do? Where can we improve? We need to document our history. Guilty as charged. I'm very bad for, doing that final cleanup step of, let's document the history, and then finally celebrate success. Now, one of the biggest challenges I find with this step, and I think it's really one of the most neglected steps in project management, is people's minds, their brains are already on to the next project. I mean, when you think about it, old boring, new exciting, and people move on to the next one. So what we're going to do today for ours, with our limited time, is we're going to focus on post-project review and celebrate success. Collecting the final actuals and documenting the project history, still very important, but they're rather mechanical. Now, one of the things we need to do is kind of position this at the beginning of our project so that when we do get to that end, you have the people still there to collect the final actuals, because it's really hard to collect those final actuals when people have left. And just on a little side note to that, by the way, while I think about it, if someone leaves your project halfway through, right? So let's say they're there for the first half of the project, they've done their work, and they're moving on, the project still progresses. Do step 10 with them. Okay, so collect those final actuals. So, I mean, picture this: you're on a 1-year-long project. It's the end of month 6, and Catherine's done, and she moves on to her next project. Are you going to wait 6 months to call Catherine back to try to get those final actuals? Yeah, that's not going to work. So run this process as people leave, because for them, the project has ended, right? For them, the project has ended. So, a good thing to do partway through. Okay, so let's get into this. Focused on post-project review. What went well? Where can we improve? Now, I want to just point out, first of all, just as we get started here, the wording. And this is really, really important. It's a very subtle thing. It's a concept we call framing. How you frame the question can really impact the answer that you get. And there was a great study done, and if you want to explore this a little bit more, take a look at a book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. He talks about it in there. He's a Nobel laureate psychologist. And what they did is they did an experiment where they got physicians to frame the question in 2 different ways. And here's the first one. So you've just been diagnosed with a terminal illness, and you're facing a major operation to deal with this. The doctor says to you, well, 3 out of 10 die as a result of this operation. Okay, so we think about that. Now let's flip that over and say 70% of people fully recover and are successful based on the operation. exact same stats, but the people who are framed more positively tended to choose the treatment over the people who was framed negatively. So how you frame it is very, very important. Now, notice what we said here is what went well, where can we improve, as opposed to what went well, what went wrong, or where did we make mistakes, or where did we fail. And there's two sides to that. One is just, as we just discussed, the whole negative aspect. And yeah, so the whole negative aspect. And then the second of which is when you frame it around a what went wrong, it often is received as a blame game. It's often received as a who's the scapegoat and who's about to get shot kind of thing. So when you walk into a room and say, you know, we're gonna review what went wrong, I don't know about you, but my knee-jerk is, oh crap, I need to hide, right? Now, if you're very careful as to framing it, you know, where can we improve? Yes, we had challenges along the way. We address those challenges. There might be some room for improvement. Let's take a look at that. Then it becomes a learning experience. Then it's being framed very positively. So the rules for your post-project review, number one, you need to be honest. And I'm going to share with you one of my experiences that I had with a post-project review, and I do invite you to share yours as well. So as we're kind of talking through this, if you have a particular experience that would be relevant, you know, just pop it into the chat window, and we'll share that with the rest of the group. The first rule is you need to be honest. You need to really ask for honesty from your team, and as well with that to be objective. So as opposed to subjective, as much as possible, we want to try to be objective. Now, here was my experience, and it's interesting because as I was reflecting on this and putting together the session today, I thought about an experience that I had and thought, oh, there's a good example of a good experience. And then as I reflected on it more, it actually is both a good and a bad. So let's take a look at the good side. It was the end of what started actually was a multi-year project that had a yearly cycle to it. And we were at the end of year 2, so we'd already gone through one cycle, and we're going through our second cycle. So the first cycle, it was a regulatory requirement. The first cycle was to really just get things up and going and you know, become compliant with this new regulation. The second cycle was more about operationalizing it and making this a long-term sustainable thing. So we ran a lessons learned or a post-project review at the end of the second year. We did one at the end of the first year as well. And I was actually tasked with running it. And what we ended up doing, which worked very, very well, is we ran it for different levels. So we had senior managers. We had one session. Excuse me. We had managers. We had frontline staff. So and we had enough people to do this, but we broke it into multiple different levels so that we didn't have staff in the room with their boss present. And the idea behind this was that if we had the staff in the room with the boss present, they might not be as honest, they might not be as objective, because they might be worried about, you know, a career limiting move or something. And to help with the honesty and the objectivity, we said, you know what, we're going to basically make all of the feedback anonymous. We're going to use some plain language, and we're going to make sure that it is done in such a way that, or presented in such a way that it, you know, will not reveal the identity of the person. Unless, of course, they, you know, want to talk directly on that. Of course, we left that avenue open as well. We're also very careful to position it as a learning session, not a blaming session. And like I said, that can be very difficult. And it's easy to slip into that, oh, you know, here's what went wrong kind of question versus here's what went, you know, where we can improve. So you want to be very careful on that. So that's my example of a good. Now, my example of a bad. Well, I was tasked with documenting all this. We all knew that we were doing in multiple sessions. All the results were going to be distilled down, summarized, categorized, grouped, and then they were going to be shared. And so I did my part. I ran the sessions. I reported the data back. I sent it back up to the team that was going to basically, the management team, to distill and send that down. So we fast forward about 3 or 4 months. I step into the elevator, and a gentleman from one of the other groups who was part of the debrief, because we actually debriefed not only the internal team but also the customers of the team, and it was actually a customer of the team or of the project, stepped into the elevator and says, "Hey, Donaldson, how you doing? Hey, by the way, where's those results?" I'm like, what are you talking about? So it turned out that the results were never shared, and that's the bad part of my scenario here today. So, what went well? Well, what went well is we gathered some really good information. We gathered some great information. We had some good objectivity. We had some good honesty in the room. We distilled that information down. Where could we improve? Sharing it with our customers, and kind of following through on what we committed to. Okay. So I'm not seeing anything popping up in the chat windows at this point, so we'll continue on. And really, this is what we're talking about when we talk about success is the intelligent use of mistakes. Because, everyone makes mistakes. The only way to not make mistakes is not doing anything, in my personal opinion. That in itself is a mistake. It's how we use those mistakes that are really key. So, and actually, for example, our mug here. Every company has marketing materials, right? And when we rebranded and changed to our new company name title shift, we of course had to create new materials and new branding and new pens and giveaways and all that kind of stuff. So we took a look at different ones, and of course some of them were good and some of them weren't, and we try them out and we reflect back on those, and if we don't make adjustments based on what's not working, or if we don't look for those opportunities for improvement, that's truly a mistake. It's when we find those opportunities and actually leverage them that now we've got success, right? So we're actually growing and moving forward. So we're going to move to the second piece for our session today, which is all about celebrating success. And this will bring us to our first question. So what is the primary reason, in your humble opinion, to celebrate success? So why would we do that? I mean, it's talked about all the time in pretty much everything you read. We need to celebrate success at the end of our projects. So why do you think we should do that? What are the reasons? And as usual, the first question is usually quite slow to get the first responses up. Although I think it's slow from my side. Are we seeing some answers coming in? I'm not seeing any answers. They show up in the chat window, right? The questions window, so let me pop that one out. Oh, there we are. Oh, my goodness. Sorry about that, folks. I'm still new at this. It's only been, what, 12 seminars or something. All right. Recognition from Mark, absolutely. Ensure high morale moving into the next project. Oswaldo, awesome. Thank you so much. Yes. One of the key challenges that we see, or one of the key barriers that we see all the time, is this concept of getting the right resources, and we talked about that in step 3. And one of the things to do is get people wanting to be on your project, right? I always like to say, and this is something that comes out of my horse training world, but you can tell how good a project experience was by how willing the person is to come on the next time, right? So yeah, absolutely. Sure, high morale. Motivate for future projects from Elizabeth, absolutely. Shows appreciation, Jordan, yes, absolutely. And along with the helps with the formal closeout, yes. So there's actually two aspects here. There's this HR human aspect around showing recognition, improving morale, showing the appreciation, those sort of aspects. There is also the formal closeout stuff. There is the, have I crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's and closed out contracts and, things like that, absolutely. People feel acknowledged for their work. The work that they contributed to, from Roberta, yes, absolutely. To publicly thank those involved, from Reg, absolutely. And Reg put a number 1 in front of that one. I just had to share. So I think that's a very key one, absolutely. Motivating the team, from Lil, absolutely. Morale, climate of information sharing, from Tim, yes, very much so. I was watching a keynote at the CSTD conference this past November, and they talked about, they have a model, the guys who are presenting, they're called Presentation Genius, is their company. The Terra model, and the first T was tribe. Are you a member of the tribe? Do you feel like you're included? And then I'll let you guys Google it to find out what the rest of the letters are. Document the successes for stakeholders. Oh, yes, beautiful. Thank you, David. we not only have to think about the team, but we also have to think about the stakeholders and managing those stakeholder expectations. Building confidence from Lori, yes. For project team members, morale regardless of PM project outcome from Kim, yes. Take the time, oh sorry, it just jumped on me there. Where did it go? Project members regardless, the outcome, here we go. Take time to feel the sense of recognition and accomplishment, absolutely. So you guys are hitting it right on the mark here. Recognize the project team members for their efforts from Nicholas, yes. Emphasize a feeling of success in the team, and I love, Bill, thank you. I love that you use those words, emphasize the feeling of success, because you know there's lots of ways you can examine this, and we can do that post-project review, and we can focus down on the negative and say here's what went wrong, and we got to do better next time. But we still need to have that feeling of success, and sometimes those negatives can be turned around as positives, because you know what, yes, we did miss the mark here, and we did miss the mark there, but you know what, we're going up against some extraordinary challenges. Within our business, we're constantly bidding with customers, and we just recently had an RFP for a large company down in the States that it looks like we're not going to get. But you know what? Based on the conversations and they wanted to come back with more information, and we kind of have a sense who our competitors are. We gave our competitors a good run for their money, and you know what? That in our book is a success, because you know you don't win all the bids. But you know, based on how much it was, how much information was asked back, and the back and forth, we're well within the running. All right. So we're going to move on to our next piece. Celebrate success. Okay. Now everyone enjoys a party, right? Hey, it works sort of. So we were just trying to create a little party atmosphere here. Woo! I was trying to get some noisemakers, but I couldn't find any. Thanks, Lauren. So now I got to let Brian know that I just made a big mess in his office. All right, everyone enjoys a party. It also signals the end or a transition. Now, when we think of it in those parts, imagine you've been on a project for 6 months. Or even more so, you've been on a project for 3 years, right? So that large one that I was telling you about, that was that multi-year thing. You know, that was for some of us. We were a multi-year project, and it really signals the end, and it helps us transition. Now, I want you to think about. We want you to think about, you know, what we do in major transitions in our lives. We have ceremonies, right? So, what are some of the major transitions in your life? Well, birth doesn't count because, you know, that's kind of the start. But you think about graduating from school, right? So as you transition from, let's say, grade school to secondary, or secondary to university, or finishing university, we have parties to celebrate these transitions. When we get married, we have parties to celebrate. And then we also have parties or ceremonies, not necessarily a party, when things come to an end. And I mean, think about a funeral, right? We have a transition, you know, often referred to as a celebration of people's lives, and you know, we again try to put a positive spin on it as much as possible. So we think about the end of a project. For some people, it can be a little bit, or it can be a very big transition. So if we've been on a major project and we've been on it for the past 2 or 3 years, well, you know, we're effectively starting a new job, right? We often celebrate when we start a new job as well. So these can really help. You know, do that transition. Now, I just need to, I noticed the comment came in, said everyone enjoys a party, and we've got a comment from Reg saying, but not everyone does. And it can be uncomfortable for the introverted. So, good point, Reg, absolutely. Now, there's a lot of you know, misinformation in there around, you know, introverts and extroverts and so forth. So, we want to make this inviting, right, not forced. Right, because I agree, and you know what, I'm an extrovert, but yeah, there's parties that I don't enjoy. So you know, we want to make it inviting, right, and to try and make it as enjoyable as possible for everyone involved. So much as we do from an educational perspective, when we tailor our sessions to hit multiple different learning styles and so forth, you do want to keep that into consideration as well, right? So we want to try and find that right balance. Signals the end transition. It does recognize the accomplishment, as we talked about. It's very key to recognize the accomplishments of people, and then, of course, leave on a good note. And you know, if you think about those projects you've had where there was lots of challenges, you overcame them, and you finished on a good note, you know, that's kind of what you remember, you know, how you finished it, right? You know, leave on a good note. Now, this next graphic that I have here, there we go. So this is Jennifer. And Jennifer is one of my students in the class I was teaching. It was a 3-day class on project management. And we had just finished, so that you can see her certificate. She's kind of using it as a coaster, but you can see her certificate. Now, the reason I took this picture of Jennifer is because of the flowers. So here we are at the end of day 3, right? It's the end of the day. We're just kind of doing our final wrap-up. You know, people are filling in their course evals, they're getting their certificates, we're doing our final reflections on, you know, what we learned over the 3 days together, and a delivery arrives, right? Delivery arrives in the room. You can see this nice big bouquet of flowers. And what it was is it was Jennifer's team thanking her for, you know, her project had literally just finished. And like while we were in class in those 3 days, you know, there was the final emails and the final, you know, closeouts happening. And so her team actually got together and got her this nice, beautiful bouquet of flowers and sent it to her in her class to say, you know what, thanks, it was a good experience. So I mean, great example of recognizing the accomplishment. So, you know, we tend to talk about this from a PM recognizing their team perspective, but hey, if I'm a team member and I've had a really good boss and a really good PM on that project, you know, I want to recognize them and let them know. So with her permission, I took the pictures. I got to get a picture of this. Now, what I did notice afterwards, though, is she's not kind of looking up at the camera and smiling, and the reason for that is literally those flowers had just arrived seconds before, and she was busy emailing her team to say thank you. So that was kind of a very cool thing that happened there. So wanted to share that. Now, so we've talked about recognition and you know, leaving on a good note and, you know, all that kind of stuff. I want to just kind of shift gears a little bit and ask this question: what motivates your team? So I'm just going to put that out there and ask that question. What motivates the team? Wow, that was quick. We got our first response already. So Oswaldo said a new project. Oswaldo, can you expand on that a little bit? A new project. Andrew says success. Success is a huge motivator, absolutely. Nothing motivates like success. And then, of course, we run into the challenge of, well, how do we motivate the team when we're not having success? And how do we motivate the team when things are you know, faltering and we're stumbling a little bit? So if anyone has any thoughts on that, I'd love to hear from you. Learning something new from Elizabeth, absolutely. We are hardwired as beings to go and explore and to learn new things, and this is all part of that whole, you know, autonomy and mastery piece, and just that whole, you know, what drives us, absolutely. Hearing little successes and progress from Roberta, absolutely. Challenges from David, yes. There's actually a very interesting neuroscience piece around your brain physiology and your brain chemistry changes the day after you make that big accomplishment, and it's kind of almost like a postpartum depression, where just after you've you know, achieved that goal, you kind of get a little depressed. So yeah, absolutely. So recognizing that, so receiving recognition from Elizabeth, I think we did already. Oh my goodness, now it's flowing off the screen here. It's gotta expand my little window here. Okay. Success projects, challenges, receiving recognition. Knowing that they are valued, yes, absolutely, Timothy. You know, giving increased responsibilities, etc. Being able to overcome challenges from Edwin, yes, absolutely. Successfully resolving issues or achieving a goal, yes. I mean, it's not really that much fun when you win and you don't have good competition, you know. And there it is. Okay, cool. Oswaldo did reply. And he said, members of the team like to know they are thought of as part of the team when new projects are to be developed. Yes, absolutely. So now let's expand on that a little bit, because that's a really good point. You're getting to the end of a 3-year project. Okay, this has been your whole life. You've been sequestered. You know, we talk about war rooms. You don't have to go too far in large organizations to find a boardroom that's been, you know, sequestered and commandeered for a large project, and you know, it's been taken over for, you know, the next 2 years kind of thing. Well, let's think about that team when they're at the end of those 2 or 3 years. You know, they're going, okay, well, my job that I left to come and do this project has now been long filled. You know, that person is now the incumbent. Where do I go from here, right? So, you know, if you're showing and really kind of overtly demonstrating that they are a valued member of the team, that will help them with some security. That will help them with some of the, where am I going from here stuff. Absolutely. So thank you, Oswaldo. Small successes throughout the process, recognition of the project leads, senior management plan, or senior management team or the client. And that's from Kim. Yes, very good points. And this is one of those things where, from a motivation perspective, it's not a, one time at the end of the project. It's an ongoing and throughout. Beautiful. Yes. So some really good points here, folks. Thank you guys so much. Okay. So looking at this, I adapted some information from Dan Pink's book called Drive, which is a really good read. And it might be a little bit of my confirmation bias kicking in, but it's one of those ones where I agree with him, so I think he's right. But what's interesting, though, and if you take a look at some of his stuff, is he's not basing it on opinion. He's basing it on like 50 years of research and multiple studies. And here's what he found. Tasks with only mechanical skills, higher dollars equals better performance. So when you pay someone for the performance, i.e. the whole carrot and the stick piece, you get increased performance, right? And this is part of the reason why people like assembly line workers get so much money, and this is how you motivate them, is you kind of increase that pay. So if we have very mechanical skills, you can increase pay, higher dollars equals better performance. However, and this is backed up by like 50 years of research, tasks with even rudimentary cognitive skills, and in the modern world of the thought industry, really that's what we're doing. We're doing cognitive skills. Higher dollars actually degraded the performance. Okay, and like I said, this is adopted from Drive from Dan Pink. Now, for those of you who don't want to go through the whole book, I'm there with you. If you Google surprising truth about what motivates us, if you Google that phrase, the surprising truth about what motivates us, you'll see a YouTube pop up. It's an RSA Animate. That one with they do the whiteboard thing while he talks. Love those, by the way. And I do have the URL, so if you have any difficulty finding it, just fire me or Lauren a note. We'll send you back the URL. It's a little 20-minute, 30-minute piece. It's Dan Pink's TED Talk, basically, done to the animation. And it is brilliant, and it just kind of goes through this, right, in some really cool detail. And so what we're really saying here is that more pay, get less, right? So we're looking at projects that are constantly underfunded, that are constantly dollar challenged, and we're putting out saying, well, let's throw more money at it to motivate the troops. Yeah, more money you throw it, the less you're going to pay, or the less you're going to get back. And I got into a really good discussion about this with one of my students one time as a younger guy, and he was adamant that money motivates people. He wouldn't agree with me, and he happened to be a basketball fan. So I said to him, okay, you've got a choice. You've just been drafted to the majors, right, to the professionals. You're about to go, a multi-million-dollar dream contract. You're about to go play. Do you want to take the contract for $14 million a year with that team that's not going anywhere, or do you want to take the $1 million contract and get the championship ring or the pennant, or what you can tell I'm a sports guy, and win the championship? He said, well, of course I'll go for the one with the championship. It's like, okay, you just made my point, right? We take pay cuts for meaningful work, and the ultimate pay cut is volunteer. I mean, many of us, I do, many of us volunteer our time. We work for free, right, to do things because it is meaningful to us. So, and I love this quote from Barry Latimer: "Eat the carrot, burn the stick." The whole stick and carrot thing. It doesn't work, right? Okay, so we're going to get into our case study. Now, we've been using our fictitious company, the Acme Jet Roller Skate Company, for our case study for steps 1 through 9, and that worked great. Well, I think we're about to find out. Now, the problem with using it for step 10 is that we need an actual project. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to shift gears a little bit. We're going to take a look at ourselves in the mirror. And the big thing that we want here, and this goes back to the objectivity and honesty part, is when we do our lessons learned, we want to make sure that the reflection that we are seeing in that mirror is accurate and honest. So we're going to use our title shift. We offered a series of 10 webinars. They were starting on the first Friday of the month. They're 1 hour over lunch. and that's Eastern Standard Time, by the way. So that's one of the questions that I would like to ask. Does the time frame work? We're following this 10-step model, and we're at step 10, and it was interactive, so we had polls and questions. This was kind of the, I kind of looked at what we had planned to put together at the beginning, and what we think we did put together, and this was kind of our plan, and this is what we've executed. Now, what I want to do is get you guys who have participated in this project to give us that feedback. So we've got a number of questions for you, and basically we're asking, how did we do? So we've got a few questions. Now, just before I set this up, unlike what we've been doing where, when you answer the question and I say, oh, thank you, Kim, and thanks, Dave, and thanks, Roberta, for that, we're going to do this with anonymity. So if there is items that, you thought, hey, that was good, please let us know. And if you're thinking, hey, there's some opportunities for improvement, please let us know about that as well. And I'm going to offer that anonymity so that you can feel free to make those comments. Okay, so we're basically going to ask a question, how do we do, but we need to set a context first, so we're going to do a poll. How many sessions have you attended? And we've got 4 levels, everywhere from, this is the first one, to all of them, and Lauren's going to pop that up in just a second. It should be up now, and if you can actually vote on the poll, and then we can see the poll results. So Kim, if you can go and put yours in on the poll, that'd be awesome. Okay, we're at 62% voted, 65%, 71%, like with all of our polls. We'll wait till we get to about 80%, 80, 90%, then we'll go from there. So we're at 73%, just over 50 on our webinar today, by the way. It's great. This is actually very cool. I'm liking this. Okay, we'll give it another couple seconds. Okay, so we've just hit the 80% mark, so we'll cap it off there. Thank you. So appreciate that. Now the results will come up. Awesome, we're sharing the results. So what we had is 7% of you that are on today have been here for all 10. That's amazing. That's awesome. Thank you guys so much. So from 5 to 9, 25%. So we're looking well over 30%. Well over a third of you have been here for more than half of these webinars. That's great. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I apologize. When you're voting, I was going to say if you've watched them recorded versus being live, but that's fine. So 39% at 2 to 5, and 30% this is the first one. And by the way, for those of you, for that 30% you've been on this one only, first of all, welcome. And second of all, we will make the recordings for all 10 available. So when we send out the thank you note after, we include the recording of this one as well as all the other ones. So if you do want to check out the other ones, feel free. That's great. Thank you. Okay. So now that we have a context of who's out there, we're going to go to the first of our 2 main questions, and you'll respond within the question box for this one. What did we do right? And of course, the next question's coming. Where's the improvement? And I want you to think about this in terms of timing. So our initial plan was to do this at noon over lunch. And as we've been doing these, we've also opened a Vancouver office. So we are expanding our reach across the country. We have been doing a lot of work in the West Coast over the past few years, and we're kind of looking, to expand that market some more. So we're kind of, toying with the timing and maybe changing the timing a little bit more so that it's more centrally focused. The length, the 1 hour length, the content that we've covered. So we have our 10 steps, very project management focused, very procedural focused. We've got coming ones for your PMP exam as well as, into leadership and those sorts of things, as well as the format. So the format of, we've got the talking head over here, hello. We've got the slides, we've got some animations, a little bit of videos, things like that. If there's, what's going well there, and then, just the technology. We chose to go with GoToWebinar. It worked for us. So what's your feedback there? So I'm just going to let you guys kind of feed those in. We're getting number of different responses here, which is great. So please, let us know what we did right. So the length and the timing was right. The technology seems good from a couple of people. I'm pleased with all the areas in the series. Great, thank you. See, this is the part where I get to read all the good stuff. Yeah. Length and time, great. On the East Coast, gives us time to have lunch when we do the webinar. Beautiful. So people are using because our intent was kind of to make it an over lunch thing. Well-paced on the topics, great. All were good. Length and timing is right. See, I'm resisting the urge to glance over to the right and read your names. So thank you for that. Length and content format was good. Okay, beautiful. Yeah. Oh, there's a nice one. All were good. This is my 9th session. So thank you for that context. Good, beautiful. Loving it. Love GoToMeeting. Use it for my projects. Beautiful. So it seems like there's kind of a consensus around the length and the technology. We seem to be doing pretty good there. So now comes the hard part. All right. And again, just keep typing in your comments. So where could we improve? Is noon good, or would you prefer to have it at 2 o'clock or 11 p.m. or whatever? Is the length 1 hour good? There is some logic or some thought out there around 1 hour webinar should actually only be like 50 minutes to give people time to get to and from and so forth. And I know we did run one where it did go a little bit long, and we used the full hour and then a couple minutes, and we did get some negative feedback on that. So we are listening to that. The content, the format, and of course the technology. And just to give you a quick little bit of feedback, after our very first one, we did get some feedback that the quote at the beginning and the end, opening and closing, was very well received. So we've made sure that that pops in. Okay, so some of the areas for improvement. Use more industry-related examples instead of analogies. Okay, great. Take that into consideration. Bi-weekly instead of monthly between sessions. Oh, interesting. So you want them more frequently. Yeah, because monthly, I know, and that's a bit of a balance because, yeah, it takes some time to put these together and so forth. More advanced content, yeah, okay. That is actually in the plans. It's exactly where we're planning to go. So when we first put these together, we're thinking, let's get the base down and then move into the more advanced stuff. Beautiful. Couple people for more advanced content. Beautiful. Use more relatable case study. Yeah, I struggled with that one. I know I wasn't overly happy with that. Agree with the biweekly. More PDUs. Well, we have to go for longer then. So maybe the biweekly will help with that. Okay, beautiful. And as always, if there's some comments or thoughts that you have later and you want to send us a note, please feel free to. We appreciate your feedback today. And yeah, I think it's been a fairly successful project. So beautiful. Okay, some key points here. Position the importance of the end at the beginning. So make this part of your project plan. Look at how important is this, how it's going to be used, and then of course we do need to follow through on that. Capture your lessons learned and act on them. Now, as I was typing this one, it really kind of occurred to me, and I really kind of thought about that. And yes, we definitely want to capture our lessons learned, but we also have to consider, okay, can we act on them? Do we need to act on them? Because there's oftentimes we can get all kinds of lessons learned and say, you know what, do we have the resources to effectively do that? Doing a better job is actually not that hard to do. It takes resources, it takes commitment, it takes, that part of it's the hard part. It's one of those that's simple but difficult to do kind of things. So yes, capture your lessons learned and then act upon them. Now, the British military have a great expression that I really love anytime I talk about lessons learned, which is, and here's the scenario. We've all done this, guilty as charged. We attend a lessons learned session. We, flip chart, what are the stuff where we've done well, where we can improve. We write it all up, we email it around, and then we go and make the same mistakes again. Right? And that's a lesson identified. A lessons learned is when there's a behavioral change. And I mean, this is a ongoing thing around how do we affect behavioral change, and a big way to do that is to put resources behind it, or at least that's one of the key pieces. So without, should we act on them? is it enough of a pain point? Is it enough of a benefit that it's going to be worth us putting that time and effort to? Or is it, you know what, this is a lessons learned. We identify that lesson. We all agree, you know what, we're actually okay with that, and we can keep making that mistake, you know, as long as we're up front. Use the close to help staff transition. Right, we had some good discussions around that, as well as recognize the accomplishments. So really, you know, kind of helping the staff transition back to their old roles or onto the new project, and, you know, recognizing those accomplishments. And I have honestly found that when I do recognize staff's accomplishments, when I go into that next project, I tend to get those people wanting to come back. And now I have an ally who's trying to help me get them on their project, as opposed to a scared native who's running the other way, right? And then, of course, yeah, to recognize the accomplishments. Which brings us back to our opening thought. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same results. And really that's the key to this quote that I chose, which is to, you know, do the same thing and expect a different result. So having identified what our lessons are, the question is, are we going to do something different? Or are we going to do the same thing and then simply expect a different result? Because if I do want to change the results, I have to change what I'm doing. And if I truly want to change the results, I need to put those resources there to support that, and then you know, build on that. So if I truly want to make that change, put the resources, make those changes. If you've identified the lessons and said, you know what, the cost of the change is too much, and we're actually okay with that, and it's not that big of a pain, we're okay to live with that, that's fine too. So let's make sure that we're being